So here we are. Today we are talking about centered in the storm. And I was just meditating and I had a vision where, oh, there's a beautiful mirror. I can see it, but I have my back to you. And I, oh gosh, what does that have to do with what I'm talking about today? And I think, in my interpretation of that, we often, when we are caught in the midst of a storm, have our back to the beloved. We've absconded it and formed into identity. And we use our identity to meet the world that we create. So if you see it, you've created it. Sometimes we like what we create, sometimes we don't. But there is one thing for sure through our philosophy and the teachings of these homes that we learned that reality is basically created based on our own consciousness, and that's how powerful you are. And I think to myself, sometimes we're afraid of our own creation and what we see, and when we take time to contemplate how powerful we are, that can be really scary. Because our personalities like to be in charge, and they like to command the presence, and they like to, the intellect of our body mind likes to know everything. It likes to store knowledge. It likes to read books. But there's a power and a presence and a beingness that we all are. That is our true and highest self that meets every occasion if we can turn our personality self, if we can turn our back to it and allow the forward-facing light of God to shine forth into any reoccurring situation that we might have in our life. Because the world is what it is, impermanent, a merry-go-round, I like to call it. You know, just wait. If you miss the opportunity to grow from one obstacle, no worries, you'll get another one, because that is the nature of the mind, and that is the nature of the world. But your true nature, your beingness, is what we are here to discover. In the introduction, I said we asked the question, why are we here? Well, we're here to be happy, but if we are chasing happiness with our personality, we'll be chasing forever. Because there will always be something that comes along and puts out the light. But when we get in tune and in touch with who we truly are, and we give up the identity that we have so gracefully used to move in our existence through life, then we ask, well, who will fight that fight? Who will argue that argument? Who will stand my ground? Who will put that person in their place? Who will meet the adversity of the dilemma? Now, I am not saying that life doesn't come at us and there aren't things that we need to address. We absolutely do need to address them. In work, we need to address them by our level of authority. Sometimes those difficult conversations and the patterns that people repeat in a work life require, depending on your level of authority, that's why smart people don't want to be in management, because they don't have to deal with that. They just have to, show up and do their job. But managers have to meet those circumstances. In our family, it's parenting. If you're a parent or a mother or an aunt or an uncle, you have to meet the growth of your children. And I don't know about you, but 4-year-old toddler tantrum has really brought me to the talk today, and that is that centering in the storm, because toddlers, please forgive the terminology, are little terrorists. Man, they could really take you for a run. And I talk about my life a lot with my children. I don't know that I'm the best speaker. I don't know that I'm the best of anything. I'm learning to let all of those things go. But what I do know is that when I show up in full force, and I try to bring the beingness of the light of awareness to everything that I do. And sometimes I fail. And that's when I see in the midst of a storm that the ocean is churning and rocking that boat. If you close your eyes for a moment and you think about a very placid lake, and a boat or a canoe or whatever your desired vessel is just calm. And there's no movement. And you're And this is what they call beingness, and there's no agitation, there's no disappointment, there's no chaos, conflict, and there's just complete and utter calm. This is the being or the state of our awareness or our true nature, and it knows how to meet every situation. But when we turn our back to it, we are essentially saying, I know how to play in the world better than you do, the one who created it. And there are times where we must do that, as I said. It's not that, depending on our spiritual maturation, we start to understand what we need to meet, what we need to let go of. And that journey is the spiritual journey. And it can be a difficult and a long one. But in that calmness, when we spend more time there, we start to understand that there's no reason to leave it. We start to understand that from whence things came, the answers must appear. But as long as there's a person deciding that it needs to do this or that, then there will always be the world and its impermanence and its yanking us around by our nose, right? I don't know about you, but when I resolve one problem, I'm like, oh, gosh, that feels so good. I feel so good about myself. I feel good about my family until that little 4-year-old or that little 2-year-old, another person, job, work, creates a whole new dilemma that I must meet again. So what I've decided is, how do I meet those things that are ever arising, always coming, in the purest, calmest form? And I fail miserably day to day, by the way. I don't know about you, but I fail miserably. And what I recognize is when I fail, it is the biggest aha for me. So then there has to be a willingness even to fail. There has to be a willingness to own your stuff and take responsibility. There has to be a willingness of true, authentic beingness. And there's so many layers of the mind, and there's so many ways to this. But the reality is there's a beingness that you are, a truth, an authentic self that shows up and is always there and has never left. It's the one permanent thing that we learn to rely on. And we learn to rely on it by the adversity that life brings us. And if we never get in touch or in tune with it, it's okay, because it's okay for your life to be the way it is if that's the way you want it. But if you are looking for that happiness, that true and permanent happiness, to be the calm in any storm, it takes a little required effort from us. It takes a willingness to be committed. It takes a willingness to look inward. It takes a willingness to inquire. It takes a willingness to scientifically see the beliefs that you've made into truths. But one thing's for sure, if you are willing to look, the beloved is willing to answer. And as we start to grow and we traverse and we walk down the path, what we begin to see is how we saw the world and what we created was based on, how we've been raised. We've talked about this, what our conditioning is, what our life is, and how we meet the storm is equal to how we were taught to meet the storm. And there, that beckons the question, is there a different way? That's the question that needs to be asked. Is there a different way? The other question is, who are you? And why should I trust you? And wait for the answer. The other question is, what will it take? Do I have to surrender everything? I have to give it all up? My car, my house, my family, my people. The thing is that you've created all of it, so there's nothing to give back. And a fear arises when we talk about surrender and meeting the storm. In order to meet that fear, we have to have something to base our trust on. So in the dynamic of a person, you have your senses, taste, touch, feel, and this is what interprets the world. And then we have our mind. The mind is a power within consciousness. It's very strong. It is what pulls us around. We have our intellect. We have our ego, and then we have the absolute self shining in the back, ever present and always aware. And each one of those things, if you look at them going, your senses can never look back to the mind. The mind can never look back to the intellect. The intellect cannot look back to the ego, and the ego cannot look back to the self. It's shining forward. So each one of them uses the other. And what we have to begin to see is how the ego absconds all of them, even the identity of the self behind it, and meets the world and decides that it is going to do it its way. And someday we arrive at, I'm so tired. I'm so tired of fighting the good fight. I am so tired of the next argument. I am so tired of seeing the world my way that becomes a deeply humbling experience. Ernest Holmes says, we do not see things the way they are. We see them the way we are. So we have to then look at how am I? Not how are you, and go solve the problem out there. There's always a problem to solve out there. We have to come in here and see who's solving the problem, how we're viewing it and what we're using to view it, and how we're interpreting it, and who we assign what value to. And we continually go out. But if we could just stay here and rest a while, if we could take the breath, if we could hold love and fear in one hand, if we could see what our agenda is and what we're trying to achieve without shame, blame, fear, or guilt. I had a situation in my house, and I don't know, Bill and I got in some quandary about something, as married people do. And it was probably about the kids. It was. And I got so mad, and I go, fine, you raise them. And I ran to the room, and I slammed the door. And it was just this big blow up. And I have no problem sharing those things with you, because we all have lives, and we all have people, and we all have arguments. And why not be honest about them so we can learn from one another? I just will not hide in the dark anymore. So I was in my room, and I was like, oh, you did it again. You lost control. You slammed the door. Right? And what I recognized is the immediate shame, blame, and guilt that I applied to Bill, but not only to him, but to myself. So then I recognized, okay, I had enough awareness to go, what's next? Where do we move from here? And what was shown me was, I often refer to Luke as dysregulated. I'm reading a lot of books on childhood rearing because I'm rearing children again. And I wanted to do it better this time than I did last time. And I really want to understand the dynamic of the body and the physicality and the parasympathetic nervous system. And what I recognized in this brief moment, I said, show me. And what I saw was, I talk about kids like they have these nervous systems, but I didn't even recognize that I have one for myself, that I have my own nervous system, and that before I know it, it's out of my body. Not literally, but I think about those ghost movies where you see the ghosts kind of go out and coming back in, and that's kind of what happens. You go out, you react, and you come back in. And I thought, when will I be able to meet a storm that arises in my life in a different way than I have continually and always have met them? And it depends on the audience, of course, At home, you have more freedom to let your hair down and open your mouth a little bit wider. But what I recognize is the beautiful lesson of that I wanted to meet it in a calm way. Well, first of all, there's no problem other than the one that I created. 2, I recognize somewhere along in my life, my nervous system decided, hey, you're not safe. And it immediately reacts. What I saw is there's no Tracey slamming the door. There's no Tracey yelling. It's my nervous system arising, because it happens so instantaneously that I'm not even aware of it. We kind of call it out of your mind. And what I recognized is that there is an arising, a temperature, and depending on how safe your nervous system feels, how dysregulated you are, is how you're going to meet that certain situation. And my mind is like, yeah, way to go. Good job taking no responsibility there. Of course you did that. And it's not about that. It's not about not taking responsibility for being unkind. It's about letting yourself off the hook to see that you've moved through the world in the ways that you were taught, in the ways that you deemed safe for yourself. And it's impossible to be calm in the storm until you let yourself off the hook and you understand yourself, your own dynamic, and how you meet the world, and how you respond and react, and how you blame, shame, not just outwardly, but inward. And this beautiful freedom arose within me to go, oh my God, I can say to myself now in the most beautiful way, You do that to feel safe. You do that because you don't feel heard. You do that because you're not feeling seen. And when did that start and begin? And so I started to journal, and I started to write, and I started to discover, and a lot of memories came, and I was able to look at them and not give them meaning, and then just open up this new spatial awareness to how we move temperamentally based on the level of threat. But that threat isn't to the mind, it's to the nervous system, to the intellect. And so, me being me, when Bill called, there's still a part of me that wants to shine bright and show you that I can take responsibility. And I'm explaining this to him. He's like, And I go, oh, I see. You think I'm not taking ownership. He goes, no, I didn't say anything. Then another reason arose of how I feel like I need to explain that I've learned something so that you don't think something about me. So let me tell you that I've learned this so you don't think this. And it's just a whole game of control. There can be no peace and calm in the storm in the game of control. We have to drop it all. But how do you even know what to drop? How do you even know what to let go of? How do you even know, to surrender it all is to give the whole world up. Have you thought about how big that is, to give the whole world up and to turn? So at first we turn our back on God because we let the ego identity run the show and it thinks it knows better. It has absconded your true identity. But then we turn our back to the ego and allow the light and the love and the pure light of awareness to shine through. And what we start to see is that we have this intelligence within us, because you are intelligence itself, that meets the thing that we perceive to be going on. And those perceived things actually lessen because the mind calms and more of an awareness comes over, and you start to see why you're reacting, the story you're telling, what you're negotiating, how you're trying to make people feel good about you, and you start to let people have their own lives and move in the way they want, because as your mind calms, you don't have to prove anything to anybody. You don't worry about being a doormat anymore. You don't, let yourself off the hook and you say, hey, guess what? I totally let that get away from me, and I must have felt really unsafe. You didn't make me feel unsafe. I felt unsafe, and I apologize for the way I responded to that. Can we do that again, or are you doing okay? And we meet that with an authentic apology, and then the calmness, the wakes start to calm. And then you start to center yourself, and you get into a beingness, and you get into a flow, and you recognize, oh, I've never felt this before. And sometimes it feels so good and so blissful that we're so used to the drama over here that we step back out. We have to create a little drama to check to make sure this is still over here. And then we come back, and we're like, nope, that still feels bad. Yep, I was right about it. And we kind of step back into our beingness. And until we're over here in our beingness, who we truly are, and we spend more time here, this starts to feel home, and this starts to feel foreign. And that's what happens when people leave. Your energy changes, by the way, and the emission of your energy starts to change, and you attract different people because your light is shining brighter, and the people that we have collected to show us ourselves start to go away. Not because they don't love you, not because they haven't healed, not because they're bad people, not because, look at me, I've grown so much that I don't have any toxic people around me anymore. No, you actually develop compassion for yourself and the seeingness of how your body works and how the nervous system works and how we go out instead of in. And this sense of compassion that you have for yourself is then afforded to others. We don't make excuses for them. We begin to tell the truth. That wasn't kind. Please don't do that. I'd love to have that conversation with you, but I need it to be open and loving and kind. And I promise I'll show up in that way if you do too. And then we do the best that we can. And we recognize when the pull is there, that the person is there. And when the pull is gone, the person is gone. And when you come to a conversation or anything, you see the pull is a person trying to stay safe. And staying safe means get their way, because when you get your way, you feel good about yourself. When you feel good about yourself, there's no threat. And so giving it all up and standing in the light of the beloved, I don't know about you, but being completely naked in the light of beloved without all of the things I've collected feels very uncertain to me. But when we drop it, a little bit at a time, because that's all the beloved's asking us. We stop othering God. We stop making God something out there that's going to make me feel better. We stop seeking something that's already here. We start being that who we truly are. And we meet in the light of awareness, the beingness. And it takes time, and there is no time, so it takes time. And it takes a willingness and a commitment and a looking, and it takes gentleness. It takes compassion and empathy with yourself. You cannot offer to others what you do not offer to yourself. That is what I saw through my argument. And don't worry, there was still a couple more after that, because we're people and we bump into each other. And each little bump shows us how to be more calm in the flight of a storm. So what I'm inviting you into is into the calmness. That being centered does not mean we don't feel the storm. The storm shows up as sensations in our body, emotions, mental stories, protective responses. The nervous system reacts and explains later. The goal here is not to stop them. The goal is to understand what the storm is and what it is not. If the world is always changing and the nervous system is always responding to the change, what is it that it tells us? Even in the midst of the storm, we are okay because of our nature of who we truly are. So let's pause for a moment. Not to fix anything or calm anything, but to simply notice. If you're comfortable bringing your attention to your body, you may notice a sensation, a movement of energy. I just invite you to put your hand wherever you feel energy right now. Mine is always kind of right here. This is where I feel nervousness and anxiousness, and I put my hands there. And the sensation shifts a little bit. But what I notice doesn't move is the attention and awareness that I truly am. That I recognize this is just a feeling that has come and gone. And that's the storm. But what I'm starting to notice is the center. There's something with, I apologize, give me a moment, I just have to breathe. There is something in us which knows that we are more than what we appear to be. So as you practice this week, when you notice yourself feeling unsettled this week, pause and know that you're triggered. What is aware of the experience? What is aware of the experience, not the experience itself? Don't just answer with words, but notice. Even for a few seconds of recognition can shift the entire experience for more self-love. The world will continue to change, and our opinions amongst all of us will differ. Storms will come and go. But if we look to the world for certainty, the storm never ends. But when we learn to rely on what is unchanging and ever present within us, we discover that we were never truly unsafe. The storm moves, the center holds, and it always has. And so it is. I just know right here, right now, that there is only one thing. Beyond the body, beyond the mind, beyond the ego, the intellect, the senses, that there is this absolute truth, a light of awareness that we are. That's what makes it one. And as we identify with our own personal experiences through our own conscious awareness, we make a commitment to ourselves to look at the discordant fact directly in the face and tell the truth about it. We meet it with that awareness, with that light, and we begin to discover, laying all things down. And we just meet the experience as awareness, noticing something, and we release the idea of having it mean something about us. We are easy and gentle in the flow of spirit with ourselves and then always with others. that we open this awareness into the light of day and we hold love and fear together and meet it with faith and trust that surely that happiness that we so lovingly want is who we truly are. And as we let go of all of the falsehood of the world and step into our light and we release the misidentification, the world is shown to us as it truly is. And there we see the placid lake. No storm, no lake, just beauty, love, and joy. And we carry this deep recognition and we take it into our week and we know that has touched our heart in a particular way, in the way that we independently need it to open us up to the beloved. And we say, thank you. Thank you for this. Thank you for life. Thank you for experiences. Thank you for beloved, for every person, place, or thing that I've ever created to turn my face to you so that I may know the truth. And that truth sets you free. And so